Social media and personal privacy. Social media is pretty much a household name, and virtually everyone is on some type of social media or will be at some point in the future. Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Snapchat, Blue Sky, or even things like dating apps, Etsy, Pinterest, and so forth, social media is a part of most people's daily lives one way or another. But have you ever stopped and wondered how much of your personal life is exposed online without your knowledge? Social media platforms are fun and engaging. They're great for staying connected, but they also make you vulnerable to privacy risks, to cyber attacks, and even to identity theft. As we share details about our lives or businesses with friends, family, coworkers, and followers, we're also inadvertently giving bad actors critical information they can use against us. In this important course, I'll cover the key concepts around securing your social media accounts, avoiding oversharing, and identifying social engineering tricks used by the attackers. When we're done, you'll not only know how to protect yourself, but also gain peace of mind in your digital interactions. So let's dive in and ensure your online presence remains private and secure. So when it comes to social media, it's useful to think of it much like a giant digital billboard. So everything you post, like, or comment can be seen, shared, and even, unfortunately, exploited. And without the right privacy controls, you might be revealing way more than you intend. So in this module, we'll explore why social media privacy matters and the real risk of oversharing. So some key points. Understanding the privacy risks and their impact. Personal data, as an example, can be used for identity theft, targeted scams, or unauthorized tracking. Employers, advertisers, and cybercriminals can all access publicly available data. And loss of privacy can lead to reputational damage or personal security threats. Also, the difference between public and private information online. So public information, like profile pictures, usernames, and posts, that are set to public, which you may or may not be aware that's actually happening. Private information, on the other hand, things like home addresses, financial details, and personal conversations. So those distinctions seem pretty clear, but you'd be surprised how much you're sharing that you may not be aware of. So what I mean by that is many users unintentionally expose private details through location tags, through comments, and through interactions. And then why hackers and scammers target social media users. Attackers can look for personal details to craft convincing phishing scams, as an example. Social engineering tactics actually rely on publicly available data to manipulate victims. The more information they have, the more it seems like they know you personally or they have some type of connection to you. And as you might guess, social media profiles provide insights into behaviors, into habits, and also social connections. So it's extremely easy to post too much information, to post things publicly that you thought were private, or posting information that someone else can comment on or repost that reaches a larger unintended audience. So you may ask yourself, why should you care? I just post my family, my kids, or vacations, or what I had for lunch, so why should I care? Well, while it might be true that you're not posting anything you might consider confidential, hackers, bad actors, and social engineers, they all use this information you share to paint a picture of you. They compile a profile of you, your friends, your habits, hobbies, likes and dislikes, your favorite foods, your favorite sports teams, vacation spots, and the list goes on and on. So as I mentioned, these bad actors can in fact paint pictures of your routines, where you visit, when you're home, or when you're not home. They can see things like if you're buying expensive items, fancy cars, luxury vacations. So again, if you post all of these things publicly or unintentionally publicly, then people can get access to this that you may not necessarily want to have access. So with the advent of artificial intelligence, scraping all of this data becomes exponentially easier, which in turn allows bad actors to craft highly specific phishing campaigns that become harder to spot, launch brute force password attacks that have a higher degree of accuracy, and also hack or scam your friends or associates much more easily. Well, why? Well, because they can come across sounding just like you, whether that's your writing style, your use of emojis, use of slang, and so forth, or talking about specific events or habits and hobbies. So the idea is not to scare you into retreating into a cave and going back to the Stone Age, but rather to be aware of what is shared online, take inventory of your accounts, and ensure your privacy settings are accomplishing what you actually expect. So think of it this way, our social media accounts are a lot like our homes, places that we feel safe and share experiences with friends and families, but just like our house, you wouldn't leave it unlocked and unsecured. Or maybe you would, depending on where you live, but typically speaking, you wouldn't do that, right? So we need to treat our social media accounts and online accounts the same way. So when it comes to securing social media accounts, what does that really mean? Well, basically three things. We want to make sure we create strong and unique passwords, and I mean unique for every single site that we visit, and we'll explain more about that in just a moment. we need to enable two-factor authentication, sometimes referred to as 2FA or MFA, and then adjust our privacy settings on our major platforms, right? Our different social media platforms that we visit. So when it comes to strong and unique passwords, what does this mean? Well, a strong and unique password is your first line of defense against cyber threats. So weak or reused passwords make it easier for attackers to break into your accounts, steal personal information, and of course, cause financial damage. So when we talk about unique passwords, we're talking about complex passwords for every account and at least 12 to 16 characters. Now that sounds a bit daunting, but we'll talk about password managers and ways to make that easier in just a moment. We also need to make sure we enable 2FA or two-factor authentication on all sensitive accounts, especially email, banking, and social media. And then use a password manager to generate and store passwords securely. So why do strong passwords matter? Why do we care? Well, it prevents brute force attacks, right? Short or simple passwords can be cracked in seconds using automated tools. And then it also stops credential stuffing. It's a term basically meaning if you reuse passwords across sites, a breach on one site gives attackers access to all of your accounts. And then it also protects sensitive data. So compromised passwords can lead to identity theft, fraud, and unauthorized access to emails, bank accounts, and more, all of which we don't want to happen. So when it comes to two-factor authentication, the importance of this is even with strong passwords, enabling 2FA adds an extra layer of security. So what it does, it requires a second form of verification, typically a code sent to your phone or an authenticator app that you can download and store on your phone before granting access. So let's face it, using complex, unique passwords for every site we visit, that sounds like a plan. But in reality, it can be a nightmare if you can't remember your password, especially if it's a site you don't visit very often, right? You might set a complex password, come back a month or 6 months later, and now you can't remember the password. Well, this is where password managers come into play. They allow you to store complex, unique passwords for every site and can create the passwords automatically so you don't have to try and think them up. So a quick overview of what password managers are. So a password manager is an app that you install on your phone or access via their website, and it allows you to set a password length and a complexity of each password that you create, say 16, 20, 24 characters, and so forth. And you can specify a mix of upper and lowercase, symbols, etc. So it will create the password for you automatically and securely stores that. It securely stores it in the cloud. It also securely stores it on your devices, which is known as a password vault. Once configured, the next time you visit a website that you've configured that password for, each time you visit, it will enter that password for you automatically. So this allows you to store unique passwords for all your sites, whether it's 5, 10, or 500 sites. So it makes remembering and managing passwords extremely easy and much more secure. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that you need to set a complex master password that only you know. Okay, very important. A very complex password or a biometric password like Face ID or fingerprint. And then once you authenticate, you'll have access to all of your stored passwords. So putting this all together, 2FA or two-factor authentication and password managers. So two-factor authentication is a subset of what's called MFA or multi-factor authentication, and it requires two forms of authentication such as a password and a one-time code. It could be an SMS text or it could be an authenticator app that you use. So a password plus an authenticator app such as Microsoft Authenticator, Google, Authy, Duo Mobile, RSA, Okta, there's a number of them out there. Again, it's an application that you install on your mobile device, and that application will generate unique codes every 60 seconds. It will be synced to the website that you visit. So when you enable two-factor authentication, that website can either send you a password to your phone via text, or as I mentioned, if you have this application, an authenticator application, it will sync to the website so it knows what code it should expect. So in other words, you don't have to have an SMS text sent to you. You can use this in combination with a password manager or a password vault. And again, 1Password, Dashlane, Bitwarden, you can see the things here. There are a number of password managers out there, not recommending one over the other. They all do roughly the same thing, but they're very secure methods or very secure applications to store your passwords. So that way you don't have to remember them for each site that you visit. So when you combine two-factor authentication with very secure passwords, you're really bumping up the level of security that you're implementing for the sites you visit and the activities you conduct online. Now, why is this important? Well, what happens if an email password is compromised, as an example? Well, take a look here. Here we have our email, right? We have our password. If that password is compromised, what happens? Well, basically a hacker now has access to your password. He can go out and access a banking site. He may or may not actually know if you have that banking site. But guess what? He now has access to your email. He can try as many banking sites as he wants and tries to reset those passwords. If in fact you are a member of that banking site, and you hit reset password, it will email you a link to reset your password. Well, if that hacker has control of your email, guess what? He can now reset your password. He can do the same thing to your social media accounts, to your investment accounts, again, money, finances, crypto funds, and, as you might imagine, identity theft. All of these things can happen very, very quickly if your email is compromised. So that's why it's so important to implement such things as two-factor authentication and password managers where you implement very complex passwords. So it prevents these types of things from happening. A hacker or bad actor that has control of your email can control pretty much all of your digital life.